Ladies and gentlemen, within the opening bench, there's a very big problem that is happening within the debate, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, between opening government, opening opposition, they were morely just talking about the benefits and the harms that are coming from the K-pop culture, ladies and gentlemen. The problem here is that they never touch the main problem within this debate, which is whether or not should we actually act aggressively or not, ladies and gentlemen. This has never been talked at all within the opening bench of this debate, ladies and gentlemen. So here within closing government, we are going to create a far more clearer context, and that is what we are going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. But firstly, before that, let me point out here that within opening government, we believe that they actually failed to give us a very much exclusive urgency. Their main reason is because of the existence of the beauty standards that this K-pop culture creates, right, ladies and gentlemen. But firstly, we actually agree that K-pop culture creates beauty standards, and we agree it is a problem, but it is not urgent, it is not exclusive, because of the fact that basically there are many other industries, there are many other sectors that create the beauty standard, and as of today, feminists is already fighting the beauty standards, ladies and gentlemen, and there is already an impact from their fight. The fact that there are many campaigns of self-love, many people believe in this, which means that feminists does not need to act more aggressively. They could just still continue the moderate opposition towards the beauty standard itself, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, because of that, we believe it is not urgent at all, ladies and gentlemen. So here let me clarify about the real context. That should have been the context of this debate, ladies and gentlemen. The main problem within K-pop industry, specifically towards women, is actually the severe torment that they give towards women, ladies and gentlemen. And these form of torments, these cases, are left unfinished or are left covered up, ladies and gentlemen. There is no acknowledgement, there is no responsibility to these problems. What are the examples? It's like the sexual exploitation that happens within the agency, and also harmful treatment towards the women who are in the K-pop industry, with, for example, like the unhealthy diet where they have to go on a diet that only consumes ice, and this happens within their training period. And so at the end of the day, they could not fight back against this form of torment, ladies and gentlemen. And there is also the active cover-up towards sexual cases of idols, where these industry, the K-pop agency, can manipulate the media so that it would seem as if this case is not problematic or it was not real to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason why this is still happening until now is because of the fact that the K-pop agency, they have the power, ladies and gentlemen. They have the power to keep on covering these cases until now. Thus, because of that, that is why there must be an aggressive act upon this, so that we could act, so that we could reduce the power from the K-pop industry, ladies and gentlemen. And when we're talking about aggressiveness, this means that we would actively boycott the K-pop industry, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to report their publishing, we are going to campaign to stop streaming their music videos, to stop listening to their music, and to not buy their merch. And the point is, we are trying to reduce the source of the power that these K-pop industries gain from, ladies and gentlemen. Within the main goal is that we want to push these K-pop industries so that they would want to acknowledge their past crimes towards women, and they would want to take responsibility, and they would want to reform the system so that it could minimize or even erase these forms of torments towards women, ladies and gentlemen. But before jumping to my arguments, I'm firstly going to give rebuttals towards the opening opposition. So firstly, they say that why we should not act aggressive, because they say it doesn't matter to feminists, right, ladies and gentlemen? Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about sexual exploitation, when we're talking about harmful treatment, this is something basically dehumanizing, right? Obviously, this to begin with is something that matters to feminists, because it is not only degrading women in general, it is also degrading humans. But even if we are just talking about beauty standards, at the end of the day, it still matters to feminists, because what feminists want is to erase standards to begin with, ladies and gentlemen, not to let it exist. Opening opposition states that they are okay with standards to exist as long as there's a variety, but at the end of the day, that is not what feminists want. They do not want any form of standard to exist to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so that's because of that, they're basically backlashing with the feminists, so they could not stand at all within this debate also. Now jumping towards outside of the house, I'm going to explain to you why is it that we should act aggressively and what is going to be the trade-off. Firstly, why we should act aggressively? Under the main reason is that moderate level of opposing will have no effect, will have no power towards this problem, ladies and gentlemen. Because currently, as I've said it before, that the agencies, they have the power currently, and it is coming from the popularity that they gain. It is also coming from the benefit that they give towards their government, so that even also the country would also help to protect them, right? Which means that they could easily influence the media to cover up their crimes, to cover up their problems, and also they have additional backup, additional support from their fans, from the K-pop fans, ladies and gentlemen. Thus, considering of this, continuous moderate opposition, for example, like simply just hate speeches to cancel or explanation why K-pop is bad, would not affect any way, ladies and gentlemen, because at the end of the day, this industry is going to be backed up by the power that they have. Thus, because of that, we must act aggressive. Now, second argument in considering about the trade-off, ladies and gentlemen, this trade-off we believe is actually going to be very worth it. So, for example, let me explain to you about the process. Right? From the very moment when we start to act aggressively upon the K-pop industry, like we are going to boycott them, we are going to report them, we are going to stop streaming their services, this will significantly affect their source of power, ladies and gentlemen. They will lose a lot of the fame that they have been having. They are going to lose a lot of that income. So at the end of the day, there it's going to be a reduce of the impact that they give right towards their society, towards their government. Thus, at the end of the day, there is going to be lower power from the K-pop industry, and they are going to be far more damaged. Which in the result, they are going to realize that this is truly a mistake and it is damaging them. Thus, they are going to be forced to actually fix their past problems. Secondly, towards the society, we believe that this aggressive act will gain far more attention from the society. Why? Because we believe that the message will be sent more, because we are actually acting more serious, we are acting more aggressive, and at the end of the day, it is going to have a bigger chance from society to understand our message, from them to notice our action, to notice our attention. Thus, we are actually going to gain more support from the society, and it is actually going to increase the fight back towards this K-pop industry, ladies and gentlemen. And considering about the risk, we realize that because of we're going to act aggressive, it will result in fight backs, in backlash, even from maybe from feminists also, for example, like the part that supports K-pop industry. But at the end of the day, it is okay, ladies and gentlemen, because at the end of the day, what we are fighting for is something that is truly a threat, not something just stemming from opinions or perception, but truly a threat towards human and towards women. Thus, at the end of the day, it is still going to be worth the fight for, considering of any risk that exists. We are proudly to propose.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, as the government whip, I would like to explain about several classes that we have from the opening benches until now, ladies and gentlemen. From the opening benches, we believe that they have misled the point of this debate by itself, ladies and gentlemen. The motion clearly stated that we are trying to aggressively oppose the K-pop industry in the current world as a feminist, ladies and gentlemen. But what they managed to bring are not about the urgency of why we should aggressively oppose about the motion, ladies and gentlemen. They failed to bring the debates as per the motion are trying to bring us to, and that is that we should oppose aggressively towards the K-pop industry. From the government benches, the opening government side of the House, they failed to explain about why we should aggressively oppose this motion, ladies and gentlemen. Instead, they try to compare about the benefits and the harms of the K-pop industry by itself, and that we think is not the sense of it doesn't bring any sense of urgency, and it doesn't bring any substantive matter in this debate by itself, ladies and gentlemen. Second is about the opposition side of the House, about the opening opposition side of the House. They only explain about the benefits and also the harms if we do or do not do this aggressive oppositions, ladies and gentlemen. And they also support the beauty standard, in which we as a feminist are greatly opposed about this motion by itself, because we know that beauty standards cannot be justified even if it's diverse, because at the end of the day, beauty standards is beauty standards, and we greatly oppose that motion. And they also never explain about what will they do regarding this issue, the issue that my government side of my first speaker stated about the sexual exploitation and also harmful behavior. What will they do if they do not want to use aggressive methods? They didn't really explain about the thing that they will do, ladies and gentlemen. And now, we from the closing opposition believe that our points are what is having the best contribution, the biggest contribution in this debate by itself, ladies and gentlemen. Because like my first speaker has told us before, that he managed to bring the urgency about what we are trying to discuss in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. And that is about the current situation inside the K-pop industry by itself. And it's including but not limited to sexual exploitation and also harmful behavior that force the idols to to alter their body through any extreme means, ladies and gentlemen. Like for example, the dieting that only uses ice, ladies and gentlemen. And so we also managed to explain about the reason why we should do an aggressive positioning in this kind of debate, ladies and gentlemen. Because in the current status quo, the K-pop industry, the company, even the country by itself, or even the supporters around the globe, we already tried the moderate ways to solve this problem, but it bears no fruit to our effort, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why we think that by aggressively opposing, as in boycotting, as in not listening to their music or not buying their merchandise, and etc., it will give them a lesson. It will give them a lesson that there is something wrong with you, and we need to solve that as soon as possible. And why it is us that should solve this problem is that because we are the consumer that they're trying to exploit, ladies and gentlemen, and that by hampering their income and by hampering their fame, it will show that there is something wrong with your industry, and you need to solve that problem, or else we will not tolerate what you're doing. We will boycott you from your products, and we will not stop until you solve your problems inside your industry by itself, ladies and gentlemen. And what makes our case, in this case, about sexual exploitation is exclusive of only to our side of the house, is that because in general, the kinds of beauty standards exist in many kinds of form, and not only from K-pop, it also exists in beauty pages. Yes, we know that beauty standards is wrong, but like what my first speaker said before, is that the feminists right now, they are already trying to suppress that kind of beauty standards, like for example, by movement to love yourself or something like that. And that is not the sense of urgency, because the most urgent thing that we have to discuss here is that the issues that happening in the K-pop industry, and that cannot be exposed to the public and also to be taken care of by the government itself. And they even have fans, like for example, that will defend them of what they're trying to do wrong. But by us trying to aggressively oppose them, it will give them a sign that it will give them a big impact for them to realize about what their mistakes is inside the industry by itself, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and also the trade-off that we are trying to give from my first speaker is that we understand that K-pop industry is something that is so massive around the globe, and there will be many harm that can happen, but we think that this kind of harm is justified and it's acceptable to the points of the goal that we are trying to bring, and that is to erase the dehumanizing action that they're trying to do with us. We understand that there will be severe change in the economy, in the world economy, and etc. But we believe that this kind of trade-off is acceptable, and we can. And in the end of the day, this kind of issues that happening in the Korean industry itself can be solved, and will be solved, because they will have no choice but to hear and listen to our voice, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why we, from the opposition side of the house, are proudly to propose this motion.